We've had many situations where we have troops in contact at close quarters like that are resolved very quickly. It was apparent from this one that this was drawn out. This was different.
It was an atypical battle that led to extraordinary heroism. This is the story of Sergeant First Class Leroy Petry. Leroy was born in Santa Fe, New Mexico on July 29, 1979 to parents Larry and Lorella. The middle of 5 boys, Leroy grew up following his older brothers until he was a teenager, at which point his true leadership abilities began to shine. After graduating high school in 1998 and spending a year at college, Leroy decided to leave his college career behind and serve his country.
Leroy was do it, try it, nail it, and go after it.
He was very, very active. He wanted to be right there cooking, cleaning. If his dad was outside working on the car or something, he'd be right there. If I was pulling weeds, I mean, I've never seen a kid want to pull weeds. He was like, look at our pile now.
I had some horses at the ranch, some horses, and he was just a little guy like that, you know.
He was older, about 10.
So he was waiting for me to saddle a horse for him.
He wouldn't come home.
And Grandma said, well, she hasn't come yet. So before she knew it, he went out in the corral and put some grain cans, you know, and stuff, and saddled the horse. By the time I got back, he was already riding the horse out there.
One of the biggest things that really sticks in my mind was every night he would stay at the end of my room and while I was in bed getting ready to sleep, and he would tell me about his day and about all the stuff that would go on to his day. And I remember just trying to fall asleep all the time, but he just kept on going and going, and I didn't like it at the time. I was just like, go to bed, go to bed. But I really enjoyed and missed those things.
As Leroy grew from a child into a teenager, his dad worked with him closely to make sure he stayed on the right path.
Well, Leroy was in a public school, freshman year at Santa Fe High School here, a local high school in town, and I guess it's rough. It was the biggest school in town, a lot of kids, and I guess he really didn't fit into it. I went and took it upon myself to pull him out of there, send him up to a private school called St. Catherine's Indian School, to where it was taught by sisters, Catholic sisters. Somehow when a lady in black and white can get a hold of you, it'll turn you around.
Is the award they gave him through the Chamber of Commerce for receiving the Bootstrap Award. And I think this is the invitation.
Shows like a bootstrap that, you know, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps because,
Yeah.
you know, you're all
And
slipping
you
and
actually
slipping and falling and
tighten them up, and you tightened yourself up,
able
and
to
you
walk and
you decided
stand
to.
for your own.
Right.
He turned the rock completely. So it's like me turning a switch on and off.
Leroy was looking forward to continuing his education, and when he graduated from high school, the next stop was college.
And he was in college in Las Vegas. And he told me, Mom, I got to tell you something. And I said, what? You know? And he says, well, I'm joining the Army.
When he went in, I just knew that he couldn't just be a regular enlisted. I figured he's going to take it to the limit.
Stephen Drysdale, Leroy's first cousin, enlisted in the Army 1 year before Leroy signed up.
We worked really hard together to try and get him out to second bat where I was so we could be together again as a family. He ended up in second bat with me, and we hung out a lot, as much as we could anyway. And then another good memory is probably the night he met his wife.
We met out having drinks with friends, and the funny story is he thought he had won the lottery that night.
Don't tell that story.
Yes.
Bought some lottery tickets, scratch them off, and we get, you know, 300,000, 300,000, 300,000. We thought we won the lottery. We read through it a couple times, checked it. Okay, yeah, we won the lottery. Leroy goes back in, gives the cash register attendant $50 for selling him a winning ticket, you know, for $300,000.
Oh my gosh, he called me, I think he was already 5 years in the Army, and he said, Mom, I have a good surprise for you. And I said, oh yeah? What is it? You're getting out? And he goes, no, Mom, you know what? You're never gonna work again in your life.
I got a call, and it's like, wake up, wake up. And I'm like, well, what do you want? What are you calling me this early in the morning for? He's all, because I got to tell you, surprise, I won the lottery and I'm getting out of the military. I was like, are you serious? Are you serious? He's like, yeah, me and Steve, we had all these scratchers and we won, I think it's $1 million or something. He didn't even know the amount.
My girlfriend at the time comes back, reads it, you know, oh, you guys are idiots, you didn't win. You know, it's supposed to be in a line, not across from each other, so we actually didn't win anything. And at least we don't think we did. I don't know what happened to that ticket. Maybe we did win, but.
And I just feel really bad for him because he was spending so much money and spending so much time and telling everybody, waking up the world basically and saying, hey, I won the lottery. And the guys in his unit, I'm sure, gave him a heck of a time.
When I came back into work and the team leader and squad leader said, oh, so you're back at work, huh, Mr. Big Winner? And it wasn't a winning ticket, but that was my fault for listening to my cousin who told me it was.
So I guess lost the lottery but won his wife, so maybe he did win.
When he met Ashley, he was like, Mom, I met a very, very nice lady, and she is very pretty, very, very intelligent, and she's a lot of fun. And her kids are too. And I said, oh, really? And I wasn't shocked because he loved kids. He you know, changed diapers, his 2 younger brothers.
We have 4 children. Brittany is 20, Austin's 17, Reagan's 13, and Landon's 7.
While I was deploying a lot, my wife took care of a lot of stuff, and I used to joke with her and the guys at work, say, hey, I got my Alpha and Bravo team leaders at work, and she's my Charlie team leader at home, taking care of the Charlie team. So
he comes from a great family that's, you know, involved in the in a great supporter for the military, and his wife Ashley is a tremendous spouse that supports him, and he's got a great Army family. The great thing about Sergeant Petry, if I'd say, is, you know, he's caring, he's reliable, he's driven, but the unique thing about Sergeant Petry, and with a lot of Ranger leaders that are common, but to him particularly, is that he was always willing to listen and always willing to learn.
Probably was one of the more eager squad leaders moving into Delta Company that I knew. And Sergeant Petry always struck me as that type of eager squad leader who would take any task, no matter how menial, and he would go above and beyond with it.
Sergeant First Class Leroy Petry volunteered for the 75th Ranger Regiment because of its reputable history. At Fort Benning, Georgia, Leroy worked his way up from a grenadier to a weapons squad leader. He's deployed with the Rangers 8 times, twice to Iraq and 6 times to Afghanistan, totaling 28 months overseas. On Memorial Day in 2008, his Army career would take a turn that would change his life forever.
I was camping in our Pecos Wilderness during Memorial Weekend, having a great old time, and got a call that my son was injured.
I just turned flush, and I felt like fainting, and I ran to my room, and I kneeled on my knees, and I started crying, and I just started praying. No words could explain how that felt. You know what I mean? No words.
To me, it's like a dream. Whenever I get upset, I put it in the back of my mind. I'm sorry. But it was a bad time when we heard.
Well, I really just
I walked into my grandma's and everybody's just crying. I was like, what happened? I thought like something else than that. And they tell me Leroy's been shot.
The mission that we were anticipating we were going to get that day wasn't customary. It wasn't the type of mission that we generally do.
It was a very unique mission in the sense that it was a rare daylight raid. It was in an area that we did not have a lot of U.S. presence in, but we knew that it was an opportunity to strike hard against the enemy and an enemy network that was worth it.
I mean, we were all really pumped up about it because it seemed like there was going to be action happening.
Leading into the morning of the assault, we had a fix on the location of our targeted individual.
Everybody had that same sense of we needed to get business done. We knew this was an opportunity and it was a fleeting target, and this was the reason why we're going.
We went out, we loaded on the helicopters. I just remember usually you can't see the Rangers' faces because it's usually dark when we get in those things. And just the blank stares that was on everybody's face, because that level of comfort we usually have when we go in at night just wasn't there.
As soon as we landed, we started to receive enemy contact. And as that was going on, Rangers do what Rangers do best. That's neutralize and destroy the enemy. To be able to look fear and danger right in the eyes and be able to say, hey, let's get ready to take care of business.
There was actually a decision made to split the force, which kind of changed the dynamic of how we were going to assault the primary target.
First squad was clearing another building, and I was in third squad at the time, and Sergeant Petry was the weapons squad leader, and he was with us.
Petry was up there with that squad. He was up there in charge of that element as they moved in.
Many situations where we have troops in contact at close quarters like that are resolved very quickly. It was apparent from this one that this was drawn out. This was different. There's no question about it.
Me and Specialist Gathercole were clearing underneath, and Sergeant Petry and Robinson went back to clear the chicken coop and whatever was in the courtyard. So when we were down in the basement, we got the call that Sergeant Petry and Robinson were both hit.
We were actually back clearing into the compound, and I remember seeing the guy out of my peripheral vision. Two guys with AKs at their hip, just spraying, and one happened to strike me right in the thighs. And I didn't know I was hitting both thighs, but it hit my left thigh. And I ran for cover, leading out in front of PFC Robinson, who was behind me, and he was struck right in his rib cage on his left side.
I got out there first. I noticed that Petry was shot through the legs, and Robinson was laid out on the ground, and I immediately took out a tourniquet because I was going to throw that on Sergeant Petry's legs. And then that's when a grenade came over the wall, and that kind of blasted me and Robinson, and that's where I got knocked out. Sergeant Roberts and Specialist Gathercole came out, and they started engaging those two guys that were throwing the grenade. And then Specialist Gathercole was shot.
When I came in the front door of this compound where they're at, I see Staff Sergeant Roberts dragging another one of our guys into the back door. And there's like a trail of blood. He's all bloody all over his face. I said, who's this? And he's like, it's Gator. I'm like, all right, what do we got? He's like, we got 4 Eagles wounded. They're getting ready to put them on the litter. And I asked the medic, I said, hey doc, do we need to put his helmet on for transport? At the same time, it was Sergeant Bates, our company senior medic, looked up at me and just kind of went like, hey, this guy's not gonna make it.
When I turned around, and another grenade was pretty much right behind me and Robinson, and we were looking this way, shooting at this guy, and the grenade landed right there, and Sergeant Petry lunged for it. He grabbed it and was throwing it around the wall, and I saw it go off, and then he came back, and his hand was gone.
I could tell you that what kind of went through my mind, and if I could kind of show you with the prosthetic that I have.
Yeah.
This thing comes off, but it was literally just cut right off at the wrist. There was a little bit of meat skirt, so to speak, for lack of better words, hanging around the edges, and it was oozing. I could see the radius and the ulna bone sticking up maybe about a ½ an inch. It was vivid where I could see the black marks from where burns were, and a little bit of the dirt and the smell of still explosives. And I sat up and I grabbed it. And it's a little strange, but this is what went into my mind was, why isn't this thing spraying off into the wind like in Hollywood? And then right away just got back to reality. Oh crap, got to put a tourniquet on it, which we keep tourniquets on the outside of our kit. And I grabbed that and I was able to tie it down, and because of the good medic training that I got when I was going through the courses, but stopped the bleeding.
As I was running between the two buildings, Sergeant Petry himself called me up on the radio and said, "My hand is gone." And I said, I'm on my way.
First guys that ran up to me was a first sergeant. He ran toward me and he grabbed me in an attempt to say, "Hey, come on, we're gonna get you out of here." And I said, "No, you're not gonna take me anywhere until you kill those guys and stop the volume of fire they're laying down on us."
Just the fact that he was still throwing grenades at the enemy, like, I mean, that's awesome right there.
The younger guys next to me were kind of still in shock and awe, so maintaining control, maintaining awareness, trying to remain calm so that they stay calm, radioed up the status and, "Hey, you guys okay?" And just making sure that staying in control of the situation.
Really, when I went back and I looked at what happened, like, I think he saved my life twice, really. You know, definitely with the grenade that was behind me.
It is very awe-inspiring when you hear about a guy that doesn't think about it, you know, and it goes back to that same thing that I would say, you know, in our creed, never leaving a fallen comrade. You know, to be in a position where, you know, you're kind of pinned down, you're receiving direct fire, you're under, you know, attack from enemy grenades, and when you're faced with a situation that's dangerous like that a ranger will take his safety, put it aside, and execute without even action, without any guidance, to save two other rangers, that is very powerful.
Sergeant First Class Leroy Petry of the 75th Ranger Regiment has received many awards over his Army career, including the Purple Heart, multiple Army Commendation Medals, and 2 Bronze Stars. But through all this recognition, you will never hear Sergeant Petry boast about his actions on the field. On July 12, 2011, Sergeant Petry added one more award to his long list, but this one was like no other.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, accompanied by Medal of Honor recipient, Sergeant First Class Leroy Petry.
Today is only the second time during the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, indeed only the second time since Vietnam, that a recipient of the Medal of Honor from an ongoing conflict has been able to accept this medal in person. And having just spent some time with Leroy, his lovely wife Ashley, their wonderful children in the Oval Office, then had a chance to see the entire Petry family here, I have to say, this could not be happening to a nicer guy or a more inspiring family. Leroy, the Medal of Honor reflects the deepest gratitude of our entire nation. Understand there will be more fighting and more sacrifices in the months and years to come, but I am confident that because of the service of men and women like Leroy, we will be able to say of this generation what President Reagan once said of those Rangers who took the cliffs on D-Day. These are the heroes who helped end a war. I would ask all of our Rangers, members of the 9/11 generation, to stand and accept the thanks of a grateful nation. Finally, the service of Leroy Petry speaks to the very essence of America. That spirit that says no matter how hard the journey, no matter how steep the climb, we don't quit. We don't give up. Leroy lost a hand, and those wounds in his legs sometimes make it hard for him to stand. But he pushes on, and even joined his fellow Rangers for a grueling 20-mile march. He could have focused only on his own recovery, but today he helps care for other wounded warriors, inspiring them with his example. Given his wounds, he could have retired from the Army with honor, but he chose to re-enlist. This is the stuff of which heroes are made. This is the strength, the devotion that makes our troops the pride of every American. And this is the reason that, like a soldier named Leroy Petry, America doesn't simply endure, we emerge from our trials stronger, more confident, with our eyes fixed on the future. Our heroes are all around us, saluting one of those heroes, Leroy Petry.
When you say hero, I think of all the men out there giving their lives and their families being behind them 100%.
As like my grandpa was saying, it's not only for him, it's for all veterans and all soldiers still out there doing what they do, so that way we could, you know, live our lives over here. And it's very inspiring.
But he had that character in him to help other people, and that's what he did. He cared about other people. So at the time what he did, he knew, I think he was really, like he had told me before, Dad, I was doing my job. I was taking care of my fellow soldiers.
Your story, Sergeant Petry, will forever inspire future generations to fulfill that fundamental duty that we all have as citizens of this great land. May God bless you, and may God bless all men and women in uniform.